Do you think the open problems in physics need the development of new mathematical ideas?
That could be the case, but I doubt it.
Okay.
I think probably it's going to be a number crunching problem. Although maybe I'm too quick with that. Quantum mechanics is, to some extent, it's something discovered by physicists. However, there are many mathematical approaches which actually are quantum mechanics without them ever using those words, because they would never recognize, they never say this is quantum mechanics. No, this is group theory, or this is representation theory, or Lie groups, or whatever, and they won't never notice that that actually what they're doing is what we call quantum mechanics. But the relation between those ultimate equations which I mentioned, at the scale where all coupling constants, all constants of nature become very important, the nature of the problem is that it has to be turned into a quantum mechanical problem. I think if one uses different language, one says, no, it's not a quantum mechanical problem, it's a problem of representation theory. Then mathematicians will say, oh, we know everything about representation theory, so give us the problem. So it can be turned into a mathematical problem, and then whether mathematicians will discover new techniques, I don't know. But I can say that in the recent past, it was more mathematical physicists who discovered something new. For instance, in a theory which is a little bit related to what I'm talking about all the time, quantum gravity, you can do the calculations like we ordinarily do that in particle theory to end up with thousands or millions or billions of equations you have to solve, which will take you forever to do, so you can't. What was discovered by mathematical physicists was how to simplify those and how to replace those just by a handful of equations, which are also difficult to solve, but they're only a handful and not billions or millions, which are impossible even to do by a computer. They say even a computer which can do 1,000 equations per second or something like that will not be able to solve this problem, so because there are too many equations. And but then some very smart mathematical physicists and the eye physicists said, well, what we have seen to be a useful tool in some branch of physics, we can now take over to another branch of physics. And we discovered, just by pure accident, by pure luck, by being stupid idiots in ignoring all the counterindications, we discovered accidentally that this is a much faster way to compute something. It wasn't supposed to be, but yes, it turns out to be. And why it actually is, we don't know, but it works. So mathematicians don't work that way. And so we end up saying that often mathematical physicists are earlier at the same answers. But then what might very well happen is that mathematicians say, oh, but now we recognize what you're doing. Right. This was also something what was done maybe 10 years ago or 100 years ago by smart mathematicians as well. It's not something new. It's something that exists in mathematics but not recognized. Yes. And that happens very often, that mathematical things in the past were not recognized. For instance, when Einstein wrote down general relativity, that mathematicians were looking at curved spaces, and they knew lots of things about that. But most of those mathematicians never had the idea that this would ever have any application at all in physics. And now Einstein comes to saying, look, this is the star behind them, the sun in an eclipse will move a little bit because of those equations. Yes. And so in the very end, well, it's going to be an interplay, and I think mathematicians could help us if they would understand our problems better, but often our problems are not well enough formulated for mathematicians to say, okay, this is interesting, this is going to be a new branch of mathematics that we want to solve. Eventually we have to talk to each other and get to the answers together.